Welcome to Education Forum. I'm Herman Badillo, Vice Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the City University. The improvement of education affects all New Yorkers. This program will focus on the key educational issues and challenges before us all. My guest today is Benno Schmidt, who is the Chairman of the Edison Project and Chairman of a task force appointed by the Mayor to investigate the City University. Mr. Schmidt has a really outstanding career as an educator. He's a graduate of Yale College and Yale Law School, and he was a law clerk for Chief Justice Earl Warren. Then he became a professor of law at Columbia University and dean of the School of Law, and after that became president of Yale University and had an outstanding record there. Now he is the chairman of the Edison Project, and before we get to the problems of the City University, let's talk about the Edison Project. What is the Edison Project exactly?
The Edison Project is a private company that was created to enter into partnerships with public school systems to bring innovation and improvement and the benefits of competition and choice into public schools and charter schools, of course, which are a type of public school.
Is the Edison Project a type of charter school?
The Edison Project operates a number of charter schools around the country, and we also manage a number of public schools under contract with the local school board. We invested a fair amount of money and time in creating a new school design. We offer a longer year, 25 more days to the school year, a longer day, about 2 hours a day. This is much more time for teaching and learning.
What states are you in now?
We are in 8 states: Michigan, Texas, Florida, Massachusetts, California, Colorado, Minnesota, New Jersey, and Kansas. And
how many schools do you have?
We have 51 schools.
Is that elementary and junior high school and high schools?
We always begin in communities with elementary schools, but then we have a full K-12 program, and we add middle schools and high schools. We want the children attending our high schools to be mainly children who've had the benefit of our program before, because it's a much more ambitious program. The kids and teachers have much more time for learning, and we incorporate in our schools much higher standards. So as we move into the high school years, we expect the youngsters in our schools are likely to be well ahead of youngsters in more traditional public
Well, I assume
schools.
the reason that anyone would want to have the Edison Project would be that they would expect that you do better than the regular public schools. Has that been the experience?
Well, yes, we've had, I think by and large, we've had a lot of success. Most of the children in our schools are typical of the diversity that you see in public schools. We have many disadvantaged children and many minority children. And on the standardized tests, assessments, which our schools take as well as other public schools, we are generally doing very well. Our children are showing very strong progress. I think, though, Herman, I would not want to claim the Edison Project has the answer. I don't think anyone has the answer, but what we do offer is an excellent program that gives people a choice of something innovative and new within their communities, and that will lead to progress in the long run.
Well, maybe you have some indication of what might be the answers. For example, one of the debates that's going on in education now is the issue of smaller class size. In New York City, for example, my wife, who is a teacher in the 7th grade, has 37 kids in the classroom.
Right.
Now, I've heard Mayor Giuliani many times say that, in his opinion, class size doesn't matter. On the other hand, Randy Weingarten and the teachers say class size matters a great deal. What has been the experience of the Edison Project?
We don't think class size in and of itself is as important as a number of other things. It is helpful to have smaller classes in the very early grades, particularly in reading, but also in mathematics. But it's, in our opinion, far more important to have clear, high standards at every grade in every subject, so teachers and students know exactly what they are expected to accomplish.
In other words, there's no social promotion. Nobody's passed automatically.
No, there's not. We think children are best served if there are clear standards, if teachers and pupils have ample support to meet those standards, including extra help for children who might tend to fall behind. But we think everyone is better off with clear standards that everyone meets before they are promoted through school. And to us, high standards, clear and frequent assessment, very strong support in terms of an excellent curriculum and instruction, help with teacher training, the use of technology. These are the key, we think, to higher achievement.
Well, the other point that many people in education say makes a difference is bureaucracy. They complain that in a central city like New York, there's too much bureaucracy because first you have the principal and his bureaucracy, then you have the district superintendent and his structure, and then you have the chancellor's office. What kind of structure do you have in the Edison Project?
Well, we agree that's not a good structure that you just described. What we have is a school leader, the principal or the head of the school, who is clearly accountable for the success of that school.
And to whom is he accountable, or she?
The school leader in our schools is accountable to us. We are accountable to the school board or the charter school board, as the case may be. All of our contracts are structured so that we, the Edison Project, can be fired if our schools don't work well.
You get paid, and how do you get paid?
We get paid the same amount that the local school district is spending in any event. Our program does not cost any more, it costs the same. But what's critical is that we be permitted to allocate that money in the way that we think is most productive, and not in the old traditional way that schools have been functioning for decades and decades and decades. It's really remarkable, Herman, if you look at schools, how little they've changed over many, many decades. And part of the answer is well-researched, innovative programs that do things differently, including allocating resources differently.
Now, you have not come into New York State up to now, I assume because the authority wasn't there. Now, with the approval of 100 charter schools, you expect to come into New York State and New York City?
Yes, we do. I'm not sure exactly when. New York State and City, as you know better than anyone, is a complicated place, complicated politics. But we're very interested. We're very excited about the new charter school law. We think that's great for New York. We think choice, competition, subject to accountability, can produce huge benefits for the children of New York. We hope to be part of that process. So yes, we're very interested in New York State and City.
Now, the other argument that's made about what really accounts for a successful school is parental involvement. Does the Edison Project include that in its proposal?
Yes, we've created a program that is designed to welcome and encourage parents to be part of the life of the school. For example, Herman, our report card for children works through what we call quarterly learning contracts, meetings 4 times a year between the teacher, the parents, and the child. And at those quarterly meetings in our schools, we've had 95% regular parent participation 4 times a year. That's a very high level of participation. And let me mention one other element of our design, we install computers in the homes of all of our students.
In the homes?
In the homes.
Not just in the school?
Not just in the schools. Our schools have computers and are fully networked as well. But we think schools need to be tied to students' homes by an electronic link that draws the home, the school, the parents and the teachers and the students together.
And you teach the parents how to operate the computers? We teach the
parents how to operate the computers, how to work on the network. So all of our parents around the country, the 25,000 sets of parents, are on a single educational network with all our teachers and students.
Well, does that require that the parents have a degree, a certain amount of education?
Oh, not at all. Most of the schools that we're working in are schools where majority of our children are disadvantaged to qualify for Title I.
Well, would you have schools in some state which are the equivalent of an area such as the South Bronx or Harlem or East Harlem?
Yes, I mean every place is a little different, but we have inner city schools now in Miami, Washington, D.C., Detroit, Michigan, San Francisco. We have schools in Southern California and Texas and Florida that have very large numbers of Hispanic, Spanish-speaking youngsters. We have inner city schools in Detroit and Washington and Boston and Miami that are populated mostly by...
And they are successful, the children, that is.
Yes, they are. All our schools have waiting lists. Parents like them. By the way, I should add that all of our schools are schools of choice for parents. No parent has to send a youngster. But it seems to be, our program, I think, is clearly one that parents, particularly parents in inner cities, like very much for their children. They like its ambition and high standards.
If you had to project 10 or 15 years from now, what would you want to have the Edison Project show, and how would you think it would have grown?
Well, I hope 10 years from now that the Edison Project could be large enough that it would be present in many, many, many different communities, so that in any large or medium-sized city in the United States, parents and children who liked our program would have the choice of being part of that program. I hope in the second place that Edison can be a force for stimulating good competition from all kinds of new schools and new providers. I would like to see thousands and thousands of charter schools. I'd like to see universities operate schools. I'd like to see nonprofit groups come together. I'd like to see other private companies come into this so that parents have the sort of choice about education, all subject to public accountability, that they have in many other areas of their lives where competition and choice tend to produce progress, innovation, efficiency.
We'll be back after this announcement.
Do you think you have the power to change the world?
I can change the world one child at a time.
I know I can make a difference in those children's lives.
I teach.
I teach.
Yes, they're teachers, but to the kids they reach, they're heroes.
I teach.
Do you have the power to wake up young minds, to be someone's hero? Teach, to make an impact on our future. Call 1-800-45-TEACH. Be a teacher, be a hero.
We're back with Benno Schmidt, and this time we'll be talking about his other hat, and that is the chairman of the Mayor's Advisory Task Force of the City University of New York. What is your understanding of your mandate from the mayor on that issue?
Our mandate is to look very broadly at CUNY and make strategic recommendations for its improvement, and to try to help create a vision for what CUNY should be in the first decades of the 21st century. I think it's it's a broad mandate. It needs to be a broad mandate because CUNY, as you know very well, is a large, complex, and very important institution for the future of New York.
I should point out that not only am I Vice Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the City University, but I'm a member of the task force as well. And we have been holding a series of public hearings, right?
Yes, indeed. We've had 2 public hearings so far, and we'll be having 2 more shortly. We've also invited written comments from all members of the CUNY community, indeed anyone who wants to write us or email, and we've gotten hundreds and hundreds of comments about current conditions at the university and about possible changes that might be made in the days ahead.
You were the president of Yale University for many years. Just without going into what your report might say, generally, how would you compare the City University with Yale?
Well, I think the City University, of course, is much, much larger, and it has a different mission, a different mandate, although with many similarities. The City University has always had the mission of trying to bring educational excellence to a very broad and diverse group of people of the kind who need higher education in New York. And so it's much larger, much more diverse, and it's put much more emphasis on access and open opportunity for all than a selective, much smaller university such as Yale. But having said that, ultimately I think the educational objectives of all first-rate universities are more similar than not.
Now, the mayor asked you to especially concentrate on the issue of remediation at the community and senior colleges. What have you found is the problem in that area?
Well, I think there are a series of problems that have as in common the fact that there are no clear standards for what is needed to do college-level work at in various kinds of academic and professional or vocational programs. The City University receives every year thousands of youngsters who come, many of them from the New York City public schools, who are simply not prepared for work at the college level. They are not able to read well or with understanding. They're not able to write clearly. They're not able to analyze mathematical problems.
Is that a problem that should be resolved by the City University or by the public school system?
Well, it's a problem that the first responsibility for that problem lies with the public school system. But the City University can do a great deal to help improve that situation. And among the things that the City University can do, it seems to me, and I'm speaking now for myself, not the task force, we haven't issued our report yet, but the City University, I think, could help immensely by making it clear what standards of achievement and preparation are necessary before people are ready for college-level work. I mean, it does no one any good to bring people into college who can't.
Okay, but that's one of the big debates we have been having at CUNY in the past few years, making it clear. Now, in your opinion, is there a test that can dramatize that and make it clear?
In my opinion, there needs to be an objective, clear test that shows where people are. And I think
is there such a test available?
Well, I think the SAT is one good measure. I think the ACT is another.
For the benefit of those who are not educators, what is the SAT?
Well, the SAT, the Scholastic Aptitude Test, is the test that most private universities and many publics use as one measure of whether students are ready for college. For example...
But what would the measure be? How much?
Well, I think the measure would differ for different kinds of college programs. For four-year baccalaureate programs, the measure might be at one level.
Which would be about what?
Oh, most people think it should be in the range of on the SAT, 1,000 and up. I think by the same token for other kinds of programs, associate degree programs, somewhat lower scores, coupled with some help for people as they arrive at community colleges, can prepare people to succeed in community college programs. But what you have now, in contrast, is no real standards, because unfortunately the awarding of a high school degree today in New York City does not convey a clear level of achievement, and young people are given high school diplomas who do not have even the most basic rudiments of a high school education. And I think CUNY can help change that by making it clear to youngsters, their families, to the schools, to the teachers, that there are minimum levels of readiness that are required before young people ought to be admitted into college programs, because they simply can't participate effectively otherwise.
But is that the responsibility, forgetting about the reality, which is that they're not prepared now? Again, looking ahead 10 years from now, how would you define the responsibility for preparing students, and who should bear it?
Well, the responsibility clearly lies with the public school system.
But what should they do?
What they need to do, in my opinion, is to bring very clear standards into the public school system and insist that at every level, including in the earliest grades, that youngsters meet those standards before they are promoted, before they move along through school. What you have now is a situation where youngsters are promoted through school no matter what their achievement or lack of achievement. So you have lots of young people who get into high school but who can't read, who can't do even elementary arithmetic, and this does not serve their interests or anyone else's.
But if you had young people who have had an inadequate education for 12 years in K through 12, and then they come to CUNY, you think it's possible for CUNY to reverse that and give them the necessary qualifications that they need to be able to graduate? And isn't that one of the reasons that people say it takes much longer to graduate from a junior college or a community or a senior college at CUNY?
Well, I think it's possible for CUNY to prepare some of those people for college level work, but I think it is important for that effort to be very clear, to be based on clear objective standards, and to permit young people to have some choices about where they can go for remediation when the schools have failed them. I'm personally in favor of continuing remediation in the community colleges, so long as it's subject to very clear standards and objective measures of success, and so long as it does not go on endlessly in the case of people who really can't benefit from it.
Well, the mayor suggested last year and this year in his State of the City message, he said very clearly that he would like to see vouchers given to students who are going to the city university so that they might choose, if they wish to go somewhere else, What would be your reaction to that proposal?
I think that's a very good idea. I think competition and choice in education tends to lead to success. It tends to lead to innovation. It tends to produce higher accountability.
But are there institutions that would be able to provide remediation?
Well, I think I think what you'd see, Herman, in a voucher scheme is that many current institutions, which are not now doing this, would enter the field. I think you might see private colleges. I think you might see private or parochial schools. I think you would see CUNY institutions, the community colleges, approach remediation in a somewhat different way if they knew they had to attract youngsters or older students coming back who had real choices. I think you'd see private companies such as Kaplan or Berlitz for people who need English language skills coming in. And I think vouchers would be very beneficial. But I think that CUNY can play an important role and should continue to play an important role at the community college level in offering people a chance to improve their readiness for college, so long as they have a reasonable prospect of success.
Well, we're looking forward to the report, and we'll ask you to come back after it's been issued.
Thank you, Herman.
You can reach us by email at our website, www.cunytv.cuny.edu, to let us know what you think, or write to us at CUNY TV, 25 West 43rd Street, Suite 1220, New York, New York, 10036.